Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Ukuduma. Ukuduma's body has always been governed by electricity. It was the day that he learned to control his electricity that he became a true battle mage. Now he's not only able to adjust the intensity of his own attacks, but also those of his enemies. You know, just based on that description alone, it would kind of make it sound like he can self-buff and also make the enemy electric attack weaker, but that actually isn't going to be the case. Anyways, in terms of design, this monster has an amazing design in my opinion. Honestly, all of the Battle Mages designs are incredible, and their stats, as you're going to see with this monster also, they're pretty incredible too. And anyways, so everyone gets an idea of when this video is being released. As of the time I'm recording this video, there's a total of 21 Thunder Legendary monsters, and so I'm going to be comparing Ukuduma to those remaining monsters. And so we start things off with power. 3465 puts Ukuduma in 8th place along with Uria's pet. Now the power stat itself is actually the 5th highest. It just so happens that there's 2 monsters that have a power 3509 and 2 other monsters that have a power 3531, which is why he's in 8th place, but still the power itself is a really high stat. And as for his life of 29,255, this puts him in 5th place. And lastly, as for his speed, 3,454 actually puts him in 13th place along with Dr. Victor. You might be thinking, how could a speed this fast be that low of a place? It just so happens that in the Thunder category, there's a handful of monsters that have that 3465 speed, and there's also a handful of monsters that have that even faster speed at 3476. So don't get me wrong, even though he's in 13th place and there's only 21 monsters, Ukuduma's speed is not bad. It's just in the Thunder category, there's a lot of fast monsters out there. And what's truly unique about Ukuduma is that he is the first Thunder monster to be immune to possession. So this obviously won't help him out in the Thunder category. Most Thunder monsters, in terms of deny, they'll stun you. They can also blind and daze you. Dr. Victor takes it a step further and he'll even blind and burn you. And so currently, not many monsters will possess you. I think Monster Device is the only Thunder monster with a possession skill. So sure, he may help against him, but really in the Thunder category, currently in the game he's not that useful. Now looking forward into the game, if Social Point was to release more Thunder monsters with possession skills, then this monster's usability would increase. At the same time, however, I think Voltic will forever dominate the Thunder category, or at least for a very long time to come. Whenever there's a Thunder War, you're probably going to see Voltic on defense, and if you have Voltic, you should most likely use him on offense, because he has the ability to take down all of the enemy monsters. So even looking forward into the game, it's hard to see whether this monster's usability will increase that much. The only way this monster's usability will increase significantly is if he's placed in a particular book that has a lot of monsters with possession skills. Let's say this monster was placed into a book where all the main deny monsters have possession skills, then this would be a really great monster to put on defense, because then your enemy monster wouldn't be able to reliably deny him. And so it's up in the air whether or not this monster will be good in the future. As far as him being immune to possession, although it certainly doesn't help him out right now, I really like that Social Point introduced a Thunder monster with a trait we haven't before yet seen in that element. Now as for the ultimate attack, we have Electromagnetic Shelter. This ultimate attack gives a 50% shield and double damage to all of your allies. It also removes negative status effects from all of your allies. So this ultimate attack doesn't deal any damage, but rather it's a supportive skill that gives your team a big shield, which is a 50% shield, double damage, and it removes all debuffs. Now I'm personally not really a fan of supportive ultimate skills. When I think of an ultimate skill, I'm thinking like I'm about to lose the game and this ultimate skill is either going to make or break the game. Now obviously this skill can potentially help you out because all debuffs will be gone, your monsters are going to be way stronger and they're going to have a shield, so if you were on the verge of dying, now they won't be on the verge of dying. And so in terms of support, it's definitely really good, but just myself personally, I would have preferred a strong skill that may be blinded and dazed and did something a little more. But at the same time, if every single monster had an ultimate skill like that, there really wouldn't be anything unique and anything diverse in the game. So I will give that to Social Point for making this monster with this ultimate skill. And in Skills Group 1 there's nothing worth mentioning, so on to Skills Group 2 we go. We start things off with Carapace Grow. Adds 25% stamina and removes negative status effects from allies. So here we have another supportive skill. It's a team skill that restores 1/4 of stamina to all of your teammates and removes any debuffs they may have. Now the stamina regeneration may be nice, but what I really like about this skill is the removing debuffs, because against the Thunder element, you can get blinded, you can get dazed. I already mentioned, Dr. Victor specifically will blind you and burn you, and so being able to remove debuffs can definitely help you out. But also keep in mind that from the Thunder category, you can also get AoE stunned. And if that was to happen, Ukuduma really couldn't help you out even with this skill, because he would most likely be stunned himself. Next up we have Voltage Release, which deals moderate thunder damage to all enemies. It requires a cooldown, 35 damage, thunder based AoE, 36 stamina, 2 turn cooldown, and this skill is really vanilla. I don't know what to say other than it is what it is. I can't recommend the skill unless you were going for an offensive build, and I honestly can't recommend an offensive build on this monster because there's plenty of other thunder monsters that can work as attackers better than Ukuduma can. And honestly, the main purpose of this monster is to be a supportive thunder-based monster, which is kind of like a first that we've seen. And so speaking of support, next up we have Electric Shelter. Deals moderate thunder damage, ally team gains a 30% shield, requires cooldown. And so this is probably my favorite skill that Ukuduma has. It targets a single enemy dealing 45 thunder-based damage, it only costs 27 stamina, which is rather low, and it has a 1 turn cooldown, which is amazing. because this skill gives small shield to all of your teammates. Now, even though small shield is only a 30% shield, it does last for 2 turns, and because this has a 1 turn cooldown, you can realistically, in a super long battle that was to go on forever, you could have a small shield on all of your teammates throughout the whole duration of the game. That's how good it is, and this is why this monster is incredibly supportive. Because this monster has this skill, in terms of runes, I would honestly recommend giving this monster a team life rune, that way everyone can benefit even more from the shield. And quite honestly, if you don't have a Voltic yourself, if you don't have a better Thunder monster, and you happen to be in a Thunder team war, and if you do happen to have Ukuduma, then he might possibly be your best bet to survive. You give him Speed Rune, a Team Speed Rune, a Team Life Rune, or maybe 1 Speed Rune and 2 Team Life Runes, and you just activate that Electric Shelter and hope that the shield is enough that the enemy Voltic won't kill you. Because now all of your teammates will essentially have 30% more HP, and those team lives will really help your team out. So while he's certainly not the best Thunder monster to take out an enemy Voltic, if he's all you have, you better use him to the best of your ability. And with that, this is definitely a must-have skill. And so on to skills group 3 we go, Energy Infusion. Removes all negative status effects and gives damage boost and precision to all allies, requires cooldown. Here we have another team skill that costs 34 stamina with a 1 turn cooldown, which is yet again a really low stamina cost. It removes all debuffs, it gives all of your monsters increased accuracy, and it gives them a damage boost. So not only will all their attacks land, they're also going to be dealing 50% more damage. And so in my opinion, this is a better version of the other skill from skills group 2. Sure, you don't get any stamina, but in my opinion, precision and damage boost is way better than 25 stamina increase. Now of course, sometimes you may need that extra stamina to be able to use an attack, but for most games I imagine you want to go with that increased accuracy so you don't miss, and you want to go with that damage boost so you deal more damage. And so if you're deciding between both team skills, I would recommend Energy Infusion. Power Drainer is next, and look at that, this monster decided to be an attacker now. Deals very heavy thunder damage, may apply damage reduction to target, requires cooldown. Here we have a thunder based attack that deals 60 damage, 31 stamina cost, 1 turn cooldown, and it applies damage reduction. And while this monster has the capability to be an attacker, there's other thunder monsters that suit the attacker role better. This monster should really be more of a supportive monster, but even at that, even if he's supportive, I recommend this skill because of damage reduction. Damage reduction basically overrides any sort of damage buff. So say for example an enemy monster had a double damage buff, damage reduction would get rid of that. Not to mention now that enemy monster would deal 25% less damage. And so even on a supportive build, I would definitely recommend this skill. And honestly, the only way I can see this monster being more so of an attacker than a supportive monster is once again depending on what book he is. If he happens to be in a book that has maybe a lot of water monsters with possession skills. Although there's really not that many water monsters that fit that category with the exception of Mystery and Brunhilde, but I don't know, in the future if it just so happens to be the case that he's in a book with water monsters or in a book with lots of monsters with possession skills, then in that case you might want to build him as an attacker, but for the time being he fits the role of a supportive monster best. And speaking of the attacker role, High Voltage Release deals moderate thunder damage to all enemies, requires cooldown. 45 damage, 36 stamina cost, 2 turn cooldown, thunder based AoE. I would have really wished this monster could have done more. Maybe aside from dealing that much damage, maybe if it was an AoE blind, or an AoE daze, or maybe a blind and daze, then his usability would have increased a lot more. Or honestly, because he's a thunder monster, I would have been okay if it was an AoE slow. That way it has some chance to do some effect, but unfortunately it's another vanilla skill. Not really much use unless you're going for an offensive build set. And so in terms of skills, I would recommend Electric Shelter, Energy Infusion, and Power Drainer. And so lastly, that would leave Carapace Grow, because you never know when that recovering 25 stamina could come in handy and mean the difference between winning and losing the game. But at the same time, even though I said skills group 1 there was nothing too impressive, I guess we should dive into that a little bit more. And we should take a look at Rotten Saliva. Deals moderate thunder damage, removes all positive status effects from target. I really wish this skill would have been an AoE remove positive effects, because then it could have been significantly better. But currently, it targets a single enemy, 35 damage, 28 stamina cost, no cooldown, which means it's spammable, and whatever enemy monster you target, you can basically kiss all of their positive effects goodbye. Which obviously, depending on the war you're in, this could really come in handy. It can remove shields, life regeneration, stamina regeneration, it can remove it all, however only to one monster, not to the whole team. But still, I can imagine there are so many situations in which that can come in handy. And so the choice is ultimately up to you. Again, my number 1 recommended skill set is Electric Shelter, and my second recommended skill set would have to be Energy Infusion. As for the last 2 skills, you can honestly pick whatever you want. Originally I said Power Drainer and Carapace Grow, but I also think you shouldn't discount Rotten Saliva, especially since the main argument I gave for Power Drainer was that damage reduction can override a power buff, while as for Rotten Saliva, it doesn't just override any power buff, it overrides anything. And considering you'd probably be running no strength runes on this monster, there's really not much of a reason to throw the 60 damage skill with damage reduction when you're just after effects and you can run Rotten Saliva. But likewise, Carapace Grow, this skill won't always be needed. It's nice that it has no cooldown and it can remove debuffs, so if every single turn something was to happen to your team, you could essentially get rid of it and give them stamina. So every skill has their ups and downs, so ultimately it's up to you. Again, my 2 recommended skills are Electric Shelter and Energy Infusion. As for the last 2 skills, pick your favorite between Power Drainer, Carapace Grow, and Rotten Saliva. And as for the recommended runes for this monster, I really can't recommend 3 speed runes because that really won't help you out. And so instead, this is one of those unique legendary monsters that you want to give team speed. And so you have the option of giving him 3 team speed runes to really help out your attacker and your deny monster to go first. Or because he has the skill electric shelter, you want to give him team speed with a combination of team life. That way you can maximize the benefit of electric shelter. And in terms of a Thunder Ward, because you can't always successfully deny an enemy Voltic, you might want to give this monster a team speed and a regular speed, because Voltic does have an inherently faster base speed than your monster, and so you want to make sure your Ukuduma gets a turn in before Voltic just in case you fail to deny him, so you have to build this monster differently according to the kind of war you're in. And on the off chance that you want to use this monster as an attacker, you have 2 main options that I see. You can run both of the AoEs, Voltage Release and High Voltage Release, and just use them back to back and hope it kills all of the enemy monsters, and it most likely will unless it's a Thunder based monster. And you should also run Power Drainer as well as Electric Shelter, or your other option would be to run Electric Shelter, Power Drainer, High Voltage Release, and Energy Infusion. And with that, the combo would be to do Energy Infusion followed up with High Voltage Release. That way you have increased accuracy so you won't miss, and you have the damage buff. And on an attacker build, you would go the typical attacker rune setup, 2 strength runes and a speed rune. And so with that being said, that is going to conclude my analysis on Ukuduma. I love this monster design. I love that he's a thunder monster with immune to possession. Currently in the game though, you can't really benefit from that. And because he's a thunder monster, there's always that main threat of Voltic. So as of the time recording this analysis, I would say he's a little underwhelming, and unless he gets placed into a really ideal bug set, he's gonna continue to be underwhelming. And with that being said, now I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about Ukuduma? Do you think I was a little too harsh on him? Do you think he's a lot better than I give him credit for? Or do you agree with me and you think he's currently not that great, and even in the future it's going to be hard for him to be great unless he's placed in a really particular specific bug? Whatever's going on through your head, please let me know in the comments below. With that being said, I'm Armor Gaming, and like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.